Hi, this is the voice of Heidie Calero with another fascinating economic capsule on the inflation saga in Puerto Rico, and it is a global trend. We are not alone in this. We are in a very distinguished company. Don't forget, those of you who like our capsules, our economic capsules, to give us a like in YouTube, and those of you who are listening to our capsule for the first time, don't forget to subscribe to the voice of Heidie Calero in YouTube and give us a like in those economic capsules. The first graph that I'm depicting for you is the impact of COVID on inflation. And this is the comparison of US and Puerto Rico with the Consumer Price Index, which is the measure that the Department of Labor, be it in Puerto Rico or in the US, uses to measure the increase in prices. Puerto Rico is the red line, and it is on a monthly basis it's on an annual fiscal year basis from 1990 through 2022. Even though our fiscal year is not finished, we are averaging what has been happening from July 1st of 2021 through February of 2022, which is part of our fiscal year. The blue line is the US, and notice that there are cycles here, at least from 1990 through almost 2003, that the US inflation was higher than the Puerto Rico inflation rate. Notice that the blue line is above Puerto Rico's, and that had different explanations, be it because it could have been increases in crops, it could have been increases in rent, could have been increases in housing prices, which Puerto Rico might not have experienced in the same measure or the same dimension. The basket of goods that a family uses might have been different in the US versus Puerto Rico. So you see those differences, but nonetheless, the important thing is the trend. And then that cycle was reversed. Now, especially since the Great Depression in the US, the financial global crisis of the bubble of the housing disaster, now Puerto Rico's inflation rate was above the US, and now it has reverted back to being slightly below, but following the same trend, upward trend in 2022, where Puerto Rico has 3.9% and the US in our fiscal year is 6.7%. The latest figures are that in March of 2022 in the US it was 8.5%, so it continues climbing. The next graph depicts, we are zeroing in terms of what you as a consumer feel most in your budget, in your pocket, when you go to the supermarket or when you go to the restaurants. It's food prices that have been going up. Again, the red line is Puerto Rico. It's in the same fiscal years from 1990 through 2022, and the US is the blue line. Again, notice these cycles, but interestingly enough, when we do what we call another instrument in for the economist from 2005 through 2022, there is a high correlation, almost 74%, the correlation between Puerto Rico's trend in inflation compared with US inflation. So they move, it's a positive correlation, so they move in tandem, and they are almost 74% that they really move. And what you see there is that in 2022, Puerto Rico is 4.7%, and in the US is 5.7%, and it is a steep upward range that we are experiencing. Some of the outliers in food inflation, which is what we are depicting here in the next graph, the bars show what are some of these components of the food and beverage component of the Consumer Price Index. We are comparing just January 2022 compared with January of 2021. Food away from home, it's increased 6.3%. Fats and oils, 19.1%, processed fruits and vegetables, 9.1%, eggs at a whopping 13%, poultry at 12.4%, and that is part of the main diet of Puerto Ricans. Beef also high, 10.7%, and the overall index of food and beverage just for the month of January was 5.9%, almost 6%, and continues rising. Why are we experiencing this? Well, it's not only the Russia-Ukraine conflict that we're seeing there, which has spiked up gasoline prices with the price of oil. But it is also, Ukraine is a basket of goods, especially in fertilizers and wheat, in other crops, which are essential for agriculture. And as an island, Puerto Rico receives many imports for our consumption of food. And what I am depicting here is that Puerto Rico in our economic dictionary is an open economy. Here I am depicting here exports plus imports of merchandise divided into gross national product in monetary terms. And as you can see there, from 1990, when Puerto Rico, this exports plus imports accounted for 162%. That was 62% above the national production that stays in the island. And as of 2022, we have 152%. So overall, throughout this period of almost 32 years, 3 decades, and even more if we went backwards, Puerto Rico is a very open economy. And what are some of the implications, or what is the playbook that Puerto Rico needs to address is really this concern about the food security. As an island, we are dependent on imports, and if there is some problem in transportation, in shipping, in air travel, as a conflict in Russia and Ukraine, Puerto Rico is going to feel it. COVID disrupted many of the international distribution chains, and what you're seeing here is the growth of imports has continued steadily from 1990 through 2022, from $2.3 billion in 1990 to $4.1 billion. So that has steadily increased. We continue to depend more and more on food imports, whereas in terms of the exports of food, Puerto Rico had been growing at a steady clip, and now it's declining from 1990 through 2022 at negative 4%. That's the magenta line that you see there, from $2.1 billion, $2.8 billion in 1990. We are currently at $837 million. Puerto Rico has to address many issues, and this is one of them, that we need to really pay attention to this inflation saga, because inflation is not going to end in the next few months. It's going to stay here probably until 2023. So consumer, be careful. Executive, the legislative branches, please pay attention. We need to change Puerto Rico's playbook. Thank you.